Jordan Bohannon, Jared Stansbury. It's Jared and J-Bo on Iowa Everywhere. This is Iowa Everywhere.
Yo, welcome into the podcast here on Iowa Everywhere. Got a lot to talk about today, lots of basketball to dive into. What's going on, Jordan? How's everything going?
Living the dream, just preparing for this damn snowstorm. I'm ready for summer, Jared. I'm ready.
Yeah, I thought it was – so one of my buddies is a teacher out in western Iowa. They got school off today.
Mm.
And, I was talking to him on the phone last night after the game, and obviously much later than he would normally be up on a school night. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I think it's supposed to be a really bad snowstorm. And then he texted me at like 1 in the afternoon, said he just woke up and there wasn't a drop of snow on the ground.
Wait, you woke up at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have to go to school today,
That's a hell of a day.
Well, that's what happens for these teachers when they get these snow days, especially when you're a PE teacher like he is, Like, what else do you have to do?
Honestly, the teacher, like, that's kind of a very, like, if there's a tier level, that's like a pretty elite job because you have all summer off. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the shitty thing is now when they have snow days, they make them do the virtual days. That's one of the downsides of COVID is now everybody realized they can still go to school. They just got to do it on the computer.
That should be illegal.
Yeah. If we can't travel to school, then I'm not doing school. Then that's all I need to know. Yeah.
That's like when the people were trying to invent like concrete that instantly melted snow to eliminate like snow days or some shit like that. I don't remember when it was. It was a few years back.
What kind of moron out there is like, yeah, we don't want snow days.
Right. That's like the biggest
Nerd.
childhood like dream is having a snow day and going outside with your friends during a snow
Right.
day.
That's the same guy. The guy who wants to invent things like that is the same guy who asks the teacher why they didn't pick up the homework at the end of class. Fuck that guy.
Those people, those type of people, there's a special place in hell for those people.
Nerds. All right. Like I said, we do have a lot of basketball to talk about today. Iowa State with a big win last night over Texas at Hilton Coliseum. Iowa's win streak is up to 4 games. Their next one coming up on Saturday. They go on the road to Columbus to play Ohio State. I want to talk about the postponed game against Northwestern that was supposed to be played on Wednesday. But let's start with Iowa State. The Cyclones with an 11-point win last night over Texas. Tyrese Hunter obviously made his return to Ames, and that was a big storyline going into the game. But man, I thought the biggest takeaway from it was just to see Iowa State come out and play a really talented team, and have to out physical them in a really tough game. And you're able to make enough plays in the second half. And the stuff with Tyrese kind of felt like it went on to the back burner a little bit, where they were out there playing really good ball and able to get away with with another win, get yourself back in a tie for first place in the Big 12.
Dude, that environment at Hilton, first off, it's a shame that game wasn't on television like ESPN. I know it was on ESPN Plus, but bro, that environment is, me and Iowa State have a lot of memories, right? A lot of negativity, a lot of positive ones, some negativity ones, but I will say this: Hilton Coliseum, when it is like that, man, I don't think there's another basketball environment out there that's more fun to play in. It is unbelievable how into those fans get. And, I mean, obviously you're there experiencing right in the middle of the crowd. And just watching it on ESPN Plus I wish I could have been able to experience that.
Yeah, I mean, it just is I'm blown away every time by how smart Iowa State basketball fans are, where they really know when to be crazy and when to shut the hell up, and they're just like really good at that and knowing when it's like, okay, now it's really time to step it up. Like they need, we need to get behind them for them to get this stop and things like that. And there was something about last night that was different than any other recent Iowa State basketball game. Obviously it was fueled by hatred, which is a rare occurrence, but it was also just like, you could feel, it felt like Iowa State basketball is like back, like last year it was kind of back, but it's like, now it's like people, it doesn't matter who it is that's showing up at Hilton Coliseum, the fans expect to win again, and that's going to be what drives like students coming out and camping and doing those kinds of things to get back into that first row. I mean, it just really felt like that was like an arrival moment for Hilton Coliseum. And that's what I thought was unfortunate about it not being on TV, is that you look at the atmosphere down in Manhattan in that game between Kansas and Kansas State, which was incredible and was a fantastic game that went into overtime. There's no reason that those two games should not have been back-to-back at 6 and 8 on ESPN on a Tuesday night. I mean, no way.
There's no reason for that. And dude, that Kansas State game was electric as well. But I don't know if, yeah, like I said, I don't know if there's a better environment to play in, because obviously I've been on the court. I've experienced a lot of amazing atmospheres like Indiana, Michigan State, played at Virginia, go down the line of all these places I played at. But for whatever reason, obviously there's that hatred towards me and myself towards Iowa State, which I feel like that made the atmosphere even better when we played there. But like I just said earlier, I don't think there's another basketball atmosphere when it's like that anything can top that. Obviously, I've never played it out in Fieldhouse or anything like that, but that's top notch. And something, when you have a basketball environment like that, your team's just going to feed off that. I don't care all the conspiracies out there that says fans don't really matter. They matter. And when they're like that, that affects the team.
I think it especially matters when you have a team that plays the way Iowa State does, with the physicality, defense, all those kinds of things. And you can get that crowd that has kind of that aggression behind it as well. It just like fuels what they're doing to an extent, and it always felt like that even when Iowa State was so good on offense with Fred and all those guys. When those guys would really get rolling, the way that it was like Hilton Coliseum was like an avalanche, and you could just get crushed underneath it if you're an opposing team, and it wouldn't stop, and that's what I think you're seeing now with this team with defense. I was interested to ask you about some of this stuff, because you're one of the few people out there who would really understand what Tyrese Hunter was going through last night in this game. He scored 10 points. I think he was 3 of 11 from the field. He scored 9 points right away, right off the bat, in probably the first 10 minutes of the game. But he made his last field goal with 32 minutes left, and then it was a pretty rough night for him, basically, those last 30 minutes. What's it like when you walk out onto the floor and it's like, from the second that you step out of the tunnel, it's fuck you, it's all those kinds of things. You're being booed every time you touch the ball. Like, how hard is it to have fun with that and not take it personally?
Yeah, I don't know how Tyrese was feeling. Mentally, obviously, he's the only one that knows what he was feeling during that time. But, myself, I'm more of a free-spirited, and I'm open to that kind of hatred. I loved it. Obviously, I wish I would have played better some of the times I played against Iowa State, but I feel like there's always been two types of players of all the teammates I've had, of all the players I've always played against, is guys that shy away from that kind of negativity and hatred, and guys that want it and experience it and want it to feed their energy even more and motivate them. And I would like to imagine I was kind of one of those players that wanted to step in those environments and wanted to hit a shot and, quiet the crowd or blow a kiss to the crowd and live in the moment. People could talk all their shit about those kinds of players, but I have a lot of respect for those players that, for one, I have a lot of respect for Tyrese because he stepped onto the court.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I'll give respect to Tyrese for this. I know he transferred out of Iowa State, but not a lot of people can transfer out of a team, especially in conference, and go back to that team and play them at that place and play. I'm not necessarily saying he played a fantastic game, but just be there on the court and play the game of basketball. That is really hard to do. And I have a lot of respect for a guy like that that's able to do that. And on the other end, I have a lot of respect for TJ, what he said after the game as well. He definitely took the high road, and he paid a lot of respect for what he said. He said to Tyrese after the game. I think that's really admirable and says a lot about what TJ has been doing with the culture at Iowa State. But I've always thought about how those are two different players that shy away from and guys that want it. And I think it says a lot about Tyrese that he's able to do that, and a lot of respect for both of the parties that were involved for that game last night.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, after the game, TJ was asked what he said to Tyrese in the handshake line. He told him how appreciative he was of everything that Tyrese did for the program last year, how much he respects him, told him to stay healthy and keep doing his thing. Basically, more or less what you would expect a head coach to say to somebody. But it just is – it had to have been really weird for him, because I think even – even like in the summer, you think right after he left and like there were some things that happened. He said that he sent out the tweet about free smoke for anybody after Gabe Kalsher said he was excited to play against Texas. And it was just, it seemed like he had said some things that kind of fueled that villain role to an extent. I think it's really easy to play that villain role and be like, fuck those guys when you don't ever have to see them, and then all of a sudden when you do have to see them again, like I imagine that was just generally like a weird feeling, and I think from just like being able to read the situation before the game and things like that, I think you could tell like everybody was feeling that on some level where it's like, should I go and say something to him, or like, should I even go and try and dap up with him or anything, because it's just like, it's just weird. It's just a weird dynamic. And obviously he was only here for 1 year, but still you build those bonds with people. And then, the way that those bonds were broken will probably never be fixed. Like those are things that will never be able to be taken back on some level, but it's still like, even though the fans boo you, even though all these things, that doesn't mean that anybody here doesn't have a ton of respect for who you are, for the way that you play the game, for the way that he's persevered in his life through losing his parents at a young age and being able to get to the position that he is now. Like no one here is going to sit here and knock who Tyrese Hunter is as a person, but that doesn't mean that everybody's not going to give him the business for 40 minutes when everybody's between those lines.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. And that kind of goes along what I was saying too, with those two types of players. And, the same thing with respect to Tyrese for showing up and playing and being there and being competitive. Same thing with all those guys on Iowa State that, I love the shit talking back and forth, like on social media. And it's one thing, like you were just saying, of doing it and never seeing those players again. And there's another thing of doing it and realizing you play those guys, in the smack middle of the season. I think that says a lot about a person because they're not shying away from competition. I think that's what makes college sports so great as well, is you're able to have those interactions, and something that I don't think that professional basketball is as big on because of the rivalries that have occurred in the college sports. I think that's the difference that college sports has. But I think I do want to say too about Tyrese. I mean, you mentioned it as well, that there should be respect towards that player. And obviously booing and, talking shit is part of the game, is part of being in a competition, but he did a lot for that Iowa State program. And I'm very appreciative of even just him as a player, and I'm playing against him and seeing what he did to kind of lead that Iowa State team from what they were prior to him being there into what they did last year. I hope a lot of Iowa State fans, and not saying they aren't, that they're really appreciative of what he did and for that program and how he was able to move the needle, because, basically they can talk all the shit they want about him and what he might have averaged, but, the players know behind the scenes what it takes to do on a day-to-day basis. And he was a part of that program to move the needle. And I think that deserves definitely some respect from the home fan base that he played with last year.
And it would have been really easy for him to not keep his commitment after Steve Prohm got fired, and to go somewhere else and never even play a game for Iowa State. And that's the thing that I think maybe gets lost in the fact that they had all that success last year. Is TJ Otzelberger is not the coach that recruited Tyrese, like Steve Prohm was. And for whatever reason, that bond just was not strong enough to be able to withstand some of the things that it was going to need to withstand for that to be a long-term relationship. And it just, it is what it is. I think now that you played him, you welcomed him back, you gave all those kinds of things, the fans were able to do their part. I think now it's people need to move on from it. It is what it is. You beat him. He didn't play very well. Now everybody just can say, all right, tip your cap to him. He's just another guy now,
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same thing. You kind of look at the college sports landscape as well. Like head coaches, I mean, you made a great point about him committing to a coach that he didn't play for. I mean, that took a lot of respect for him as well to just even go to Iowa State and play in that program with a different coach that didn't even recruit him. And what's lost in it as well is all these college coaches are going all over the place whenever they get a new contract from a different school to, increase their salary. And these kids are left with whatever they have behind, and not a lot of being said about these coaches going wherever they want. And I get the transfer portal is kind of a mess, but at the end of the day, coaches are able to do it and players are doing it now. I think it's just part of the game. And Like you said, you kind of take it with a grain of salt now. You beat him. He moved on. You guys have moved on. You guys have a good team. They have a good team. At the end of the day, it's just competition.
Right. It's just, what's it matter now? Like it's what matters now is the basketball. And you're able to give him the business. You're able to do your thing. If he has to come back again next year, I'm sure everybody will give him the business again. But it's like we don't need to sit here and think about it for 365 days anymore. Like it just is over. And I think you could just tell all around there was a lot of personal feelings going on in that game last night. I think on both sides, because I think that Texas did not shy away from any of the physicality, any of the talking, any of those things. Like I would say that there were times where Texas was one of the drivers of a lot of those things. There was no love lost on either side there, I don't think. And that's where, I have to give Iowa State credit, because it's with Iowa State being the kind of team that they are, that is so built on effort and playing really hard and like being able to out physical people and things like that, outwork people. When you play against a team that's more talented than you are on paper, and that they start to do those things too with physicality and toughness and really chasing after the ball and playing the way that they do, like that's where Iowa State can run into trouble with playing some of these kinds of teams. You think about a team like Kansas, you think about a team like UConn when they played them earlier in the year. Like those teams that are just tougher than you, or just as tough as anybody else, but they are also more talented than anybody else as well. And I mean, I that's what I walked away from the game last night. I was like, the story here is that Iowa State beat a top 10 team, and it doesn't have anything to do with Tyrese at this point, And man, Gabe Kalsher deserves some big credit for the way that he was able to guard on Marcus Carr yesterday and keep him uncomfortable. And obviously they've got a lot of history with each other as well. And it seems like playing against Texas, playing against Marcus Carr, playing against Tyrese yesterday kind of brings out a really good side in him, one of the better sides of what Gabe's able to do on both ends of the floor.
I did tell you before the game, for those that are listening, we had an exchange. We were texting back and forth, me and Jared, before the game, and I said, I thought Tyrese was going to have a big game, and he came out with the first 9 points. I'm like, oh my God. But obviously the last 32 minutes were a little rough. But I also said the best thing for Texas was Marcus Carr get 2 fouls.
Mm-hmm.
He had a quick first foul, and I felt like he was a little passive. I'm like, this might go in Texas' favor for him to kind of be out of the game a little bit. It's weird. I think it's Texas is a better team when Tyrese is more dominated on the ball than Marcus Carr.
100%. 100%. I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Which says a lot too. But it's like Tyrese experienced it at Iowa State. Like he kind of had the ball a lot at Iowa State, being the guard on their team. Obviously played with some great players last year, but I just feel like Texas moves the ball so much better with Tyrese with the ball the majority of the time. Marcus is just so chaotic. And I played against a guy. Some games he had 35 on us, and other games he was just non-existent when he played at Minnesota. So, but Big 12, I feel like it's a lot of Big 12 basketball. A lot has to do with who is going to show up based on the hard defensive teams that are being played.
Yeah, I think Marcus. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think Marcus is a good basketball player, because I think he's a really good player. He's a really good scorer. And when he's able to get to his spots, he's as good at getting buckets as anybody out there that you're going to find in college basketball. But, man, I have a hard time watching him sometimes with the way that he gets the ball and he'll pound that thing forever, dude. And it's like then all of a sudden there's 5 seconds on the shot clock and he'll shuffle it off to Dylan Dessou, and it's, okay, now it's your problem, bro. And that's hard for me to watch sometimes. And that's where I think you make a good point with Tyrese is it feels like they play together as a team better when Tyrese is the one that's handling the ball the majority of the time. And it feels like when Marcus Carr is handling the ball majority of the time, it's Marcus Carr and 4 other guys out there, And all of a sudden, every once in a while that might work out, but more often than not, it's him going to dribble himself into a tough situation and take a tough shot, And then his teammates just stand around and watch. And that's frustrating way to play basketball, I think.
And those are the worst point guards too, that they pound the shit out of the ball and then they wait till the last 4 or 5 seconds and they give it off to someone else. And no flows occurring on offense, and they're basically creating a one-on-one situation for a guy to get a bucket at the end of the clock. I think Tyrese did a really good job of that last year with the athletes he had on his team. He was able to move it. Obviously, Gabe was really up and down this year, but that kind of feeds off to what we've been talking about Lipsy. I think Lipsy's been doing a phenomenal job as well when there's been kind of slacking at offensive end, especially last game. They were able to move the ball, get the ball in the right hands. Like Gabe's been playing well, so he's been getting the ball in perfect spots to be able to shoot. And it just feels like they're way more comfortable when the ball is moving, when you have a point guard like that. And I mean, I know we talked about that last episode with how well Lipsy's been doing, but I thought last night was another example of just little things like that. It makes a huge difference for your team.
Iowa State's offense has just ran at such like a good, it seems like they're in a good flow with what they're trying to do on the half court right now, in where they're trying to find shots and the things that they're running. And when they're able to run their stuff, their offense is really good. It's when teams are allowed to start blowing up their actions that things can get a little bit hairy, because that's when it's, it kind of comes down to the Jimmies versus the Joes a little bit. But it's like, it's impressive to watch them run their stuff because they don't have anybody who is such an immense offensive talent that it's like they draw a ton of attention. It literally has to be all five guys doing their job and doing what they're supposed to be doing, making hard cuts, making good screens, making good passes. And when you're able to do those things, like, you can create open looks for people without someone who has to dribble it around and break people down off the dribble and things like that.
Yeah, there's just a lot of unselfish play. I think that's a great way to define this Iowa State team. I think their identity was kind of beaten up after the Iowa game. And I'm still shocked they lost as much as they did, seeing the team that they are now and playing like they do. I think that loss to Iowa, I know we've already talked about this as well, but I think that really found identity after that game. And I think their identity is playing really hard, playing really unselfish and moving the ball. And that's the keys for Iowa State moving forward, for them to make a deep run, for them to be Big 12 championship contenders.
I think that on some level, every team that doesn't have like overwhelming amounts of talent has to have a moment that forces you to look in the mirror a little bit, like a moment that reminds everyone, like, oh shit, if we start going rogue, like, this is what can happen, and I feel like that's probably what that was for that team. It's like when you can't go out and roll out five guys who are going to go play in the NBA, like, everybody has to do their job. And if one person doesn't do their job, things can go sideways really fast, And I just felt like that's what that Iowa game was for Iowa State. It was a reminder of like, oh yeah, we have to continue to do our thing. We can't just like roll the balls out and beat anybody because we're better than them.
It's the same thing with Iowa. I think Iowa State and Iowa, based off identity-wise, have had really similar seasons because, Iowa, they lost to a brutal Eastern Illinois team, and they lost to a Nebraska team. And I think they found their identity after that. They realized the same three points I just made about Iowa State. That'd be unselfish, move the ball, and play hard. And they're doing that now because of what has happened in the past. And they realize if they don't do those things, they're a team that both those teams are teams that could not get in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's huge for a team moving forward to find that identity early on in early season conference play. That's really important to do.
It's so wild that like just playing really hard can be a tenet of your team, and it can take you to another level because it feels like something that should be a given. But I think anybody who's spent any time around college basketball knows that that is not the case. Getting everybody to play really hard all of the time is really hard.
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, that point is so important because obviously people are grateful to play the game of basketball at this level, and it's very rare to even get to this level, high major Division I basketball. And the same thing's even said, at this professional level too. And it's hard for guys to play hard. I don't know why. I don't know if they're just not treating their bodies right, whatever the excuse may be, but for whatever reason, there's guys out there that just don't want to do the little things and don't want to take it to that next level. And if you're able to just even play hard, that takes away like 90% of the competition, like just playing hard, because that 90% of the competition won't even do that. And that's why you see so many deep runs in the NCAA tournament, in my opinion, is because teams just play harder than the other team. They're not more skilled. They're not more talented. If you just play harder than another team at this high level, whether it's college or professional basketball, you can beat anyone you want. And playing hard is that number one key, and that's exactly what Iowa State has figured out now.
It's so hard to simulate that, like when you're in practice where you've got another team that, especially on those quick turnarounds and things like that in the tournament, it's like we're trying to prepare to play against an Iowa State. How do you simulate what Iowa State does in practice on a 2-day turnaround? I mean, I don't know that it's possible. Like, how many people have the personnel that you would even need to have your scout team give you a good, solid look for that, And that's just like, that's where I think Iowa State, and, I think Iowa too, like especially with what some of their personnel is, like, that's what gives them a chance on those quick turnarounds is it's just like, you can't prepare for this. You have to be worried about what you're going to do more than what they're going to do, because there's just no way for you to simulate this in a really true, solid way.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with basketball IQ almost. Like, I personally think, my opinion, people are kind of just born with basketball IQ. It's not something that's developed, right? Like, you either have basketball IQ or you don't. Mm-hmm. But that's an uncontrollable. By just playing hard, that can trump all the other things that are in the way of maybe not knowing the scout as well, maybe not guarding the personnel that the scout has said that this guy is a driver, this guy's a shooter. You just playing hard trumps all of that. And you can get by and you can win games by just playing hard, because guys just don't want to do that. Guys don't want to play hard for 40 minutes, for 48 minutes, whatever level you're at. And if you're able to do that thing, like I said, it's extraordinary where you can go as a team and as a player.
Yeah, and that's what I thought last night with Iowa State. There was about a point, probably about 10 minutes into the game, where they started to really force some turnovers, and you could tell that Texas was reaching a breaking point on some level where it's like you're not like, making people quit, but where you can break people a little bit mentally of like, we're going to out-tough you. Like, this is going to be a heavyweight fight, and we're going to stand in here and go blow to blow all night, and you're not going to get us to back down, And I think that there's been a lot of games, like, if a lot of people I think can notice this, if you start to become aware of it, it's like there will come a point where you'll start to see other teams against Iowa State start bickering with each other, where they'll start to do some things that are just a little bit out of character, and that's because of that playing hard. You frustrate people into doing things that are out of character, And, I mean, last night I thought Iowa State did some things from a, outside of play the game thing that probably got into some people's heads. Caleb Grill telling the Texas bench to call a timeout was an all-timer. I'm not sure how many times someone could get away with doing that without getting a technical foul. Caleb did it 3 times though, so apparently it's more than 3 times.
Okay. People debating this on Twitter. Can't you get called a technical foul for gesturing a timeout as a defensive player?
Yeah, I think theoretically, but it's like if you're actually trying to call one,
But how do you, if you're a ref, how do you decipher?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Well, I figured there's no way the officials saw it, saw him do it, because there's no way he wouldn't have gotten a technical if they'd seen him do it. That just is talking to the other team's bench and doing it in that kind of fashion is one of those things that most officials are just not going to put up with,
Yeah, you told me a little different background information why he was doing it. I thought it was cringe at first, but again, maybe I did some cringe things in college basketball people thought were cringe, but I love that type of stuff. I think that's what makes college sports so great. You're able to, he's going to look back and be like, yo, I was talking shit to the opposing team and make them try to call a timeout. Not many people can say that in their life that they did that.
Caleb Grill got so deeply under the skin of Texas fans that someone tweeted out that they hoped he got cancer. Like, that's how deeply Caleb Grill was inside the heads of Texas people. Like, it just is it. I mean, come on, fellas.
People are so crazy. I guarantee you, it was the profile picture was just like a mascot of the Texas Longhorn, and
that's exactly what it was. I think it was. I think it was a Pepe the Frog Texas Longhorns thing, which makes it even better.
People hide behind the screen. I think it.
Oh, he deleted it. Never mind.
That's like the complete opposite of what we were talking about, like the no smoke thing or whatever it was tweeted by Tyrese. Like, those guys are actually like talking the talk and walking it. Like, they're going into the battle with each other after talking shit. People on social media don't go into battle. They just say it, which is talking about cringe, that's super cringe in my opinion. People that do that.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, it was.
And who says that as well? Like,
well, yeah, that's what I would say is like, what kind of sane person types this out and then hits send and thinks that that's a good idea in any circumstances ever? You know,
you can't. The cancer is like a line. You can't like cancer and dying. I feel like those are two things you can't joke about.
No, certainly not. Especially in the context of this guy just beat my basketball team, and I hope that he gets cancer now. Like that's just come on, guys. Like that, we got to be better than that. All right, we'll talk about Iowa basketball here in just a minute, but want to remind you guys all of our basketball content here on the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails on Main Street in Ames. It's a perfect place to go before or after Iowa State home games, anytime the Cyclones are on the road or anytime the Hawkeyes are in action. It's a great spot for late night fun with a Southern-inspired menu with a great collection of burgers, sandwiches, wings, and of course, Caroline's famous fried chicken. The atmosphere is incredible with plenty of TVs to watch any game on your radar, and there's a party room available for rent for your next big gathering. That's Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails at 316 Main Street in Ames, presenting sponsor of all of our basketball content right here on the show. All right, Iowa's win streak up to 4 games now. After wins over Michigan and Maryland since we last recorded. Got to go to Columbus, play Ohio State on Saturday. We're supposed to play Northwestern tonight. That game was postponed due to injury and COVID reasons inside the Northwestern program. Why the fuck can you still postpone games for COVID?
What year are we in?
Yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, what is this, 2020? Like, that's got to be a forfeit. If that's your problem, that's got to be a forfeit. Like, there should be no way to work around that if you in 2023. It's been 3 years, guys.
You know the worst part of this too? Like, we're talking about like this being the idiotic thing is caused by COVID, and I guarantee there's gonna be someone talking about, oh well, all these people are still dying from COVID. Like, this is the right thing to do.
Right.
Idiotic.
It just makes no sense. Like. You're like the only team in the country having this problem. Like, why do we give you guys the grace and say like, yeah, we'll play you another night, you know?
And they have 6 players too. It's not like they don't have enough players to play.
Right.
How can you just postpone a game?
Yeah, that's what I didn't understand is like the injuries, the COVID, like that just is.
So if guys have,
I don't know.
If your whole team's injured, I guess now you can just postpone a game and just not take a forfeit, I guess. I don't know. Like, you know, taking a forfeit maybe is kind of cheap too, I guess. But it's like shit. Like, that's not your fault. You know, it just is. That's what I didn't understand. That was just weird that they decided to postpone the game like that. Well, I mean, of all places, it's Chicago, so you just never know.
I mean, those people, they're probably onto something. They're the smart ones, you know.
What do you mean?
At Northwestern.
Oh, yeah. Or the dumb ones. You don't know.
Fair.
It's just
overthinking. Northwestern's got a bunch of guys on their team that probably told the teacher that they forgot to pick up the homework.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite. Where like they're so smart that they're overthinking it.
Yeah. This is definitely a significant overthinking moment. But what did you think of the win against Michigan and then beating Maryland over the weekend?
I mean, a lot of what I'm saying, I think of what Iowa's doing is a lot of what Iowa State's been doing. You know, they've been playing unselfish, moving the ball, and playing hard. And you know, obviously, Chris Murray will do Chris Murray what he's been doing this year. Connor's been stepping up huge in the starting role. Josh Dix has stepped in huge. He put a little point guard against Michigan. Tony was huge at Maryland. I think that's what makes Iowa so dangerous because they have so many guys that can step in and have a huge game. Peyton's starting to get a shot back and hit open shots, and that just creates a huge dimension for this Iowa team. They have a really tough stretch, though, coming up. I don't know exactly the 5 games ahead, but I know the 5 games are I think it's like Ohio State, Michigan State.
Yep. I got it here for you. Ohio State on Saturday, Michigan State next Thursday, Rutgers at home next Sunday, Illinois at home the following Saturday, and then Purdue in West Lafayette the following Thursday.
So that is one of the hardest. In my opinion, that's going to be one of the hardest stretches in college basketball.
Yeah, so they're going to play.
They're about to go through.
4 of their next 5 games are against teams that are in the top 25 on KenPom. And Michigan State's number 40 and would probably be in the top 25 if they had been healthy all year.
Yeah. And throwing in a game against Rutgers too, that they went at their place and beat them. It's really hard to beat a team twice in conference play. That is very, very hard to do. So that's going to be a very, I feel like, underrated game. I think they need to be ready to play that game. But looking ahead, I mean, Ohio State's, they've had an up and down year. Michigan State's always hard. Purdue, Illinois. I mean, you go down the line. The same thing with Big 12. Every night in and night out, you're going to have to come ready to play. And they've had a really relatively to Big 10 conference play, they had a kind of easy stretch here. Northwestern was probably going to be another win. They're going to get 3 home wins in a row, get their win total up to 5. But I think that Northwestern game being postponed might be a bad thing for this Iowa team. I'm hoping they're able to reschedule the game. I haven't heard anything about the future plans of that game, but it's always nice to go into a hard stretch in conference play when you have not really necessarily a pick-me-up game. I know Northwestern is really good this year, but when you have a home game that gets canceled like that, that's hard. One, to hard to get back, and one, it's kind of like it sucks because you have a home game in Big Ten that you want to play home games. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And you have that canceled,
especially when now if you're going to make it up, like, you're going to compress the schedule even more, you know, like they already play on the 21st, 26th, 29th, still in January. And then on the 4th, 9th, 12th, 16th, 19th, 22nd, 25th, and 28th, and then March 5th. So basically the longest stretch they have without a game is 5 days in the month of February. And now you have to figure out how to squeeze another game into there. Like, that's tough. That's why for me, sit there and you're going to postpone this game. It's like, well, when are you going to make it up?
Right.
Like, how are you now? Someone's going to be playing on short turnarounds, for the next month and a half. Like, that's kind of unfair, I think.
And if they don't make it up too, same thing happened during COVID year with Michigan. Like, they're deemed the champions of regular season, but they didn't play as near as much games as a normal team did. Play 20, or I think he still played a 20 game slate that year. But let's say they don't make it up and Iowa makes a run at it and they're a game short compared to other guys. Like, that's a huge difference to not have that game, first off, and as your resume to get in the NCAA tournament, and 2, for a seeding wise for the Big Ten tournament, because that's huge to have a game break, a home game that, the odds are in your favor that you're going to win that game, and that's going to increase your ability to get a better seed, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but also the NCAA tournament. So that I'm hoping they make it up, but I really don't know how they're going to be able to make that up, especially if Northwestern, continues COVID and injury and they postpone another game. That's going to be hard.
Well, yeah, is Northwestern not going to be able to play for 2 weeks now? I guess I don't know what the protocol is anymore at this point. Like, how many of those things are still in place? I don't know. Weird deal.
Throw back to when you got COVID and you had to sit out a whole month after you got sick. That was absurd.
Yeah. Guys that were spending 60 days in quarantine or something like that in a hotel room by themselves.
Dude, I could literally write a full ass novel of shit that happened during that year. That was the most insane season of sports ever.
I'll never forget when so I went to the NCAA tournament that year. I went to the second weekend. I went with a buddy. We went and watched Loyola, and it was when the second that a team lost and they could break the bubble, we're gone.
Free.
Everybody's free. We're going to the bar. We're getting drunk. We're doing whatever the fuck we want to. We've been stuck inside for however long, seeing everybody else out there having fun. And it was just so funny. You'd be walking around and you just see guys from other teams in Indianapolis just walking around, and you're that guy's been waiting months for the opportunity to walk around outside in Indianapolis and go to the bar.
Dude, yeah. And of course, the one team that got fucking COVID was the team we played first round. That's something else that I'll never forget. Like, what are the odds of that happening?
Yeah. And that Oregon team was like, it was a weird team too. It was just like
Crazy. It's just that was a crazy year. But I feel like we're going back. Maybe we're going back to a Kobe year. Who knows?
dude, it's wild to think that there's like gonna be a point like 30 years from now where we have to explain to people like LeBron got his last title. It's like, yeah, but it was the bubble
It
title.
was a Mickey Mouse ring.
Yeah, it was a Mickey Mouse ring. Like you had to be there to understand. Like I think that'll be so many things that we're gonna tell our kids someday. Is like, yeah, if you weren't there, you'll never get it. Like it just was. It was. Count. Yeah, it was just something else. What do you think going into Columbus on Saturday? What do you need to be able to do to go and win there?
It's a hard place to win. We've been fortunate to play there. We played arguably. We played there during COVID and last year, I believe. Did we play there last year? I think we won. We won both. Yeah, we won both back-to-back years, I believe.
Yep, you won 75-62 last year.
Yeah, and that year before was arguably one of the biggest wins in McCaffrey's career.
73-57 the year before that.
Yeah. That's a hard place to win at. Kind of a weird environment for people that have never been there. It's a big arena. It's almost like an NBA arena. But obviously, any Big Ten team, fans are right on top of you. Hard place to win. Anytime you're on the road in the Big Ten or any conference game, you're fighting for a W. And Ohio State's trying to find their identity as well. They've had an up and down year. Holtman's one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion, and he's a very great offensive coach. I know he's going to have those guys ready to play against Iowa. And, Iowa's won. They're on a little win streak here. Obviously, you're not going to win out. So it's basically just fighting for how long you want this win streak to last, because obviously it's going to end at some point. But the way you want it to end, you want it to end on a good note. You don't want to end on a really bad, deflating L that's going to ruin the rest of your season.
I mean, if you think about this stretch, if you could steal one of these road games and win the 2 home games and go 3-2, you have to be happy, right?
Yeah. And that goes along with what I'm saying. Like, that win streak is going to end at some point, but how do you want that to go this stretch, right? Like what you just said is, there should be a little goal here. Obviously you don't want to look ahead of games, but we go this stretch 3-2, 4-1. We're looking, as a top 20 team right now. And that's kind of how you have to look at it. Take it one game at a time, like always, but you want to get out of this rough stretch that not a lot of teams in the country would go, they might go winless in, and you want to come out on top and come out as your winning streak ends on a positive note moving forward towards mid-conference play. Because right now you're seeing like insane shifts in conferences, right? Like Iowa was just at the bottom. Now they're top 5. Like I think there's 6 teams that are tied for like mid-pack. Like these are huge games right now to go in a road game and win.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that game in East Lansing next week. They're playing good ball right now. I watched them play on Monday against Purdue. Man, Purdue is so much fun to watch with Zach Edey. That's like appointment television right now, watching the way teams try and guard him. But Tyson Walker has been in his bag, dude. That guy is a dog. Like he's good. Every night he's just getting buckets, man.
Michigan State's, I think, is a really underrated team, but it's weird. How many times the last few years have said, Michigan State's down this year, Michigan State's down this year, and somehow, in some way, they always find to beat, big time games and be there with the top teams in the country. I mean, they're right there with Purdue. If foul call goes a different way, they might win that game, but Purdue is a Final Four team, obviously, and Zach Edey is a National Player of the Year. I think we should just hand him the trophy right now.
Yeah,
I don't think it's even close.
I was looking at some metrics yesterday, and like some of his advanced numbers are like double what everybody else's are. Like he's just incredible.
It's not even fair.
I'm unsure what the game plan was when Michigan State decided to try and front him on the last possession. That was questionable, but they did as good a job as anybody of like making his life hard. I was impressed by that, but it's just. He is nearly impossible to keep under wraps for 40 minutes.
You make his life hard, and he still has 30 and 20.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable. I've never seen a player. Oscar Tshiebwe last night was really good. I think he had like 34 and 22. I mean, he's obviously another front runner for the National Player of the Year. But man, Zach Edey and Purdue, I don't see a team knocking them off in the Big Ten by insane amounts. Like it'll be a close game, like a Michigan State type game, but no one's going to come in and beat them by 20 plus. That's not happening.
I was watching them play Ohio State. I think this was last week. And Jim Jackson was on the call. And there's kind of a moment where like Zach Edey does something, and then he's like, I think I have a great player comparison for Zach Edey. And then there's like kind of a dramatic pause, and he's like, he reminds me a lot of Yao Ming. And I was like, well, thanks, Jim, for literally the only player in the history of basketball that would even be remotely comparable to Zach Edey is Yao Ming, And it's like, thank you. We appreciate that level of analysis where it's like, there is no one to compare him to, And if you compare him to Yao Ming, then you're saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, that's like the only options.
It will be interesting to see, Jared, how this season shakes up. And I mean, I would imagine he gets drafted really high and he gets in the NBA. But man, like his game it's still 10 years behind of the NBA basketball now, which is so crazy to say. Like Luka, same thing. We said the same thing about Luka's game. Like he's like 10 to 15 years behind of being a Hall of Famer in the NBA.
Shoot, George Niang, like he's the same, same thing. Yeah, I mean, Edey's gonna have to figure out a way to be able to shoot, probably, if he's gonna stick in the league. Because I don't think you can be a back to the basket big man like that.
No, but man, like we've seen him when he first got to Purdue, he was horrible. Now he's one of the most skilled big men in the country, and he's the best player in the country. So who knows what a couple years might be ahead for him. Yeah,
I was just thinking, I was like, man, there's nothing quite like comparing the only 7'3" guy in college basketball to like one of the only other guys that's ever been 7'3" playing basketball. It's just like, man, that's really inspired analysis. All right, last thing. It's just like, hey, man, like some guys there just isn't a comp for, like there just isn't anybody we could compare him to. He's one of one.
Or one that's so obvious, like you don't even have to say it.
Right, and it's just kind of funny because like Zach Edey kind of looks like Yao Ming. Yeah. So it's just like it was like all around like, man, I wonder how you landed on that one.
Yeah, how'd you get there, Jim?
Get there? How many different players did you think about before you're like, who it is? It's Yao. That's who it is. That's who he is. Yeah, man. That's literally the thing that everybody thinks the first time they ever see it.
But no one says it.
Yeah, no one says it because it's like, yeah, this is the most obvious shit ever. All right, last thing. There's this incredible video that came out on Twitter. I think it was yesterday. It started doing the rounds of the future of the game. These kids in third grade or something like that going crazy out there playing ball. We got this video. We got to break this down. All right. I have no idea who these kids are, where they're at. Oh, man.
Yo, like what? Keep in mind, everyone, these are third graders.
Look at this guy back here. Yeah. Flex on him, boy.
The funny thing is them looking back at the camera right before they're doing it.
Right. Hey. Oh, Lord.
We're shooting arrows as third graders.
I won't lie. That's a pretty pure stroke for a third grader. I love the too little. Like, that guy's twice the size of every other kid on the floor, and he's hitting everybody with the too little.
We got third graders dropping ass during timeouts. Like, what are we doing? Is that legal?
Oh, man. It's so funny because it's like that was completely unprompted. It just does it, And like, imagine being the coach of that team. And if they weren't little ballers, you'd be like, it would probably drive you nuts, but they look like they're pretty good. So it's like coach is probably like, shit, I'll just let them loose, let them do their thing,
Is this like a serious conversation though? Like seriously for right now, like, is there something wrong with the next generation of basketball? I'm being dead ass.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a fair question to be asked there. I don't know. I think it's now people celebrate way more and do things like that than they probably ever did. as little kids, they're just gonna have to learn when's the time and place. Like when is the time to really get fired up like that, and it's not in the middle of a huddle to start dropping it low.
I just think this is one of the most insane videos I've ever seen, like from funny wise, and I'm scared. First of all, we have a kid that's I was probably the same height as he was in third grade. A little short kid, skinny kid. And he's flexing into the camera. I mean, if I did that, my dad would kill me. My dad would take the belt and kill me.
And cannon 30-footers too. Like that's the other part of it. He's flexing on
made some shots, but
yeah,
I'm serious. I think, but also like on a.
We got little big baby Davis down there too, out there hitting everybody with the too little. I love that one.
The worst part is I bet all those kids are going to outgrow. He just grew a little faster than everyone else. He's going to be one of the little ones at the end of the year.
He'll be 6'1". Yeah.
But no, I'm serious, Jared. I think like I'm sure you've heard it too. Like the amount of stories I've heard of AAU basketball now, like parents like getting involved. I think there's like an actual serious issue. I think this video kind of summarizes like from a kid standpoint of where athletics might be headed, where we're at right now. Man, I don't know. I think there's actually a serious problem that's going to occur. It's already occurring, but
yeah, I'm not sure there's many jobs harder than being a high school basketball coach right now. Right. Like in dealing with some of the parents, dealing with ways some kids are. I just think that a lot of the elements of basketball that we spent a lot of time talking about before with Iowa State and Iowa, just with like, I think a lot of those things have been lost. And it's like the YouTubification, I guess, of basketball, where it's everybody wants to do the flashy things. They want to do, make the video that's going to get you on Courtside Report or whatever that is, and all that stuff. But you don't want to do the things that actually help your team win, And that's like a product, I feel like, of the individual training things when you start to do that when you're in second grade, and things like that it's just like, have we lost our way because we don't let our kids just be kids anymore? And it's like everything has to be professional, and we're all going to go and do this thing with this AAU team, and like it's got to be a whole production, and it can't just be like some kids out playing in the driveway having fun.
That's what I was grateful for my experience. I think my dad raised me the right way and played basketball the right way. And the kids I played with, like I was always around great kids, and they wanted to win, and they never cared about that kind of stuff. Obviously, maybe we're blowing this out of proportion, but the things I've seen and experienced myself, even us growing up, like it occurred at a lower level, but I feel like now it's kind of blown to an insane spot where. Kids don't even want to play high school basketball anymore because of how bad some parents are. I feel like every parent thinks their kid is the next LeBron James.
Well, and now if you don't play AAU, then you just like get left behind to an extent, And if you're not committing to playing basketball all 12 months of the year, it just is like harder and harder to do those things. I coached a 4th grade basketball team last year, which is what tells me right now, like those kids are really good for their age level. So it's like you can cut them a little bit of slack for being, kind of little assholes to those other guys, the guys on the other team. But it's like, just like being around kids and like the way that they want it, the things they want to do in the gym, and like what they think is fun, like is to me where I feel like we've lost our way a little bit, because now every kid wants to be Stephen Curry. And like when my first day of practice, I asked everybody, I was like, I want to know everybody's favorite basketball player. And I think every kid besides one said Stephen Curry, and the one who didn't was like the one kid who was twice everybody's height and said Giannis, And I was like, well, that's the most stereotypical shit that I've ever seen in my life. But it was like the kind of things that it's the guys that these kids look up to are not the kind of guys that it's like, you can replicate that, no one can replicate what Steph does. Like it's like, you can't, like, it's to have him as your role model is almost like, it's like having LeBron as your role model. It's impossible to imagine that you could ever get to that point, And it just is like, that's what kids want to do now, though. They want to be Stephen Curry, but they don't know how many hours Stephen Curry had to put in the gym to be Stephen Curry. I want to walk in and start shooting the ball from 40 feet,
Yeah,
when I can't even get the ball to the rim from right underneath the hoop.
Yeah, or I don't know how to. I don't have like the right form to even shoot a three. First off, but no, that's a great point because I think it's okay like to have those people be your role model, but you have to be able to get in the gym and replicate what they were doing outside of what they're doing on the court, if that makes sense. Like you have to be able to go in, like if you're a third grader and you love Steph Curry, like you're shooting 500 shots a day. Like you're trying to replicate what he was doing to get to where he's at.
Well, and you're not just doing it where you walk in the gym, grab the ball off the rack and start shooting threes.
Yeah.
Like think how many hours a day Stephen Curry probably puts into form shooting and things like that, you know, like just creating that muscle memory of doing it the right way. And that's what, you know, when I would try and tell them, I'm like, yo, like, let's try and, you know, when we get started here, we're going to start in close to the basket. If you guys want to start shooting out there, like you guys are in fourth grade, I'm not going to be able to stop you. So it's like, just do your thing. I was like, but when you're warming up, you know, like you're trying to kind of figure out, like you're trying to get your form and you're trying to, you know, really hammer into those things and not just be like throwing the ball around wildly. And they have no interest in that. They're like, nah, we just want to throw the ball around wildly. Let's play knockout. Let's play dribble tag. Fuck you, coach. We just want to have fun, you know.
They're cussing you out at fourth grade?
No. But that's basically what it was, you know. It got to the point where I would go to practice. It like at the beginning, I would have my whole practice plan. You know, I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this and this and this, and it was literally where I think after 2 days we made it halfway through the plan, and all they wanted to do was play knockout, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not bringing a plan anymore. We'll play knockout and dribble tag, and that's it. You know. Like no, there's no point in trying anything else.
Players took control of the locker room.
Yes, yeah, it was definitely a player-led team. I had 4 people on my team, so anytime we wanted to do anything, I had to be the 5th guy to be out there and help them out. But no, it was fun to do it. It just was like I walked away from it like, man, you know, I think if I'm going to coach kids again, I might want to coach a little bit older, like guys that actually have like the ability to control their bodies and not just like. We're rolling them out there, you know?
Well, I do think there's a sense of, I mean, just going off that video again, like there's a sense of loving what you're doing. Like I like that stuff. Like obviously at college level, I was kind of one of those players that kind of did some of that stuff. But I mean, you see like Luka was big on doing that and he's still doing that. A lot of players do that. But I mean, they're able to do that because they got to this level and they have the skills to, you know, kind of get to the level. You know, these players have your fun, but man, I don't know. I just feel like there's definitely some issues going on. And
yeah, if I was the coach of that team, that would be quickly stopped. I'd be like, we're not doing all this.
No,
you
fuck
know,
that. I'm making them run, dude.
You gotta earn the opportunity to do this, boys. Like this is we're not doing this.
I'm stopping the game. What was the team Iowa State played last year that they're doing sprints during timeout? That's my team. Arkansas Pine Bluff or someone.
Yeah,
like
something like that, man.
Or Alabama State, maybe. Yeah.
Talk about all-time embarrassing. Like your coach is so mad at you that he makes you stop and run suicides in front of 15,000 people.
I always thought it's kind of crazy how it's called suicides. Like,
what, you think that should be canceled?
No, I'm not trying to cancel the name suicides, but how crazy is that they're called suicides?
I wonder who it was that gave him the name. I mean, what else? What other name would we come? What's the politically correct name for him?
That's what I'm saying. How do you?
Because isn't Killers is the other name for it?
Yeah, it's almost like it's so not politically correct.
Well, I don't think there's anything politically correct about having to run some suicides.
I don't think there's anything
at that point when everybody's sitting on the line to run suicides. There's nothing's been going on that's politically correct. Dude, probably. I remember like in high school and college, like when we get on the line, I'm standing over the line when the coach is getting ready to count us down. I'm like, dude, what am I doing with my life? Like, is this worth it? Dude, one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. So when I was playing at Simpson, we had to get. You know, like everybody had to do study table or whatever the first semester that we were there until you got a GPA and like kind of graded out of it. And we had to do twice as many hours as every other athlete on campus. And for whatever, like, you know, we're fresh. I'm like 18 freshman, me and my buddy. And so we would go and sign in at the study table and then leave, you know, and like go back and sign back out later.
I did the same thing at Iowa. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody does. Like, if you have that opportunity to work around that, like, you're going to work around it because I'm not sitting with my ass in the library for 10 hours a week. Like, it's just not happening, you know? Right. But there was this one week where I came up literally 5 minutes short of my 10 hours for the week. And this is like in the middle of the season. And they made me stand in the middle and watch everyone else run for like 15 minutes, whatever it was, like as long as I had missed on my study table, they made me stand and watch everyone else run. And that was the only thing worse than actually running myself, was knowing it was my fault that everyone else was running and that I didn't have to run with them.
So were you just in the middle? Were you clapping them up?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. We were doing this thing called, our coach called it a Colgate, because he said that Colgate was what you would need when you get done with it, like the toothpaste, because you're throwing up, And so, yeah, I was standing in the middle, and it's like, and he's standing there basically giving me a lecture while leading these guys on the Colgate, and like, I'm just standing there like, I was literally 5 minutes off. Like, fuck this shit, dude. Like, this is stupid, And I understand why, like, I got in trouble because I broke a rule, but it was just like, come on, man. Like, I don't care if you make me run, but like, I just felt bad that I made everybody else have to run,
Yeah, that happened a few times with our college team. Like, that's actually, dude, study table hours are actually like insane.
Yeah, it's so stupid, dude.
But some of the guys need them. I will say that some of the guys need them, but is it really beneficial?
Well, I know that I probably could have used them at Iowa State, so it could have used some of that accountability probably, but what can you do? Yeah. All right, man. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Talk to you again soon. Peace.